In 2015, there was an article published, and the title of that article was Why Lime Crime is the Most Hated Beauty Company on the Internet. And what really gets you with that article, it's so well written, what really gets you is this line right here. It says, "This brand has everything: fake deaths, Nazi costumes, legal threats against 13-year-old girls, hacker attacks, class action lawsuits, FDA warnings, credit card fraud, cold sores, and a questionably named eyeshadow palette called China Doll." And that is just cracking the surface of, yes, one of the most controversial beauty brands of all time, Lime Crime. And the vast majority, if not all of these controversies surrounded their founder. Her name is Doe Deere. Today, we are diving deep into why Lime Crime was so controversial and how they really developed an extremely strong fan base in the early to mid 2010s, and how all of that slowly, piece by piece, came crumbling down to the point where if you are new to makeup in the past couple of years, you may never have even heard of Lime Crime. It is a wild ride, my friend, and I cannot wait to go with you on it. This is Behind the Controversy Lime Crime, and it's starting right now. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to my channel if you have been here before. If you are new here, hi, my name is Jen. This channel is called JENLUV, and on this channel, we mostly talk makeup news, but I also have this series called Behind the Controversy, where we talk about things that happened in the past in the beauty space and how it has impacted the beauty community and just cosmetics as a whole because of what happened with them back then. I will tell you, when I sat down to research for this video, I fully intended to cover every single controversy that Doe Deere and Lime Crime went through. But as I was going through it, I was like, you know what? I just want to dive extra deep and really go into the details of the biggest controversies because I personally find those the most fascinating. Because what the goal of this video is to talk about the choices that Doe Deere made in setting up Lime Crime and running Lime Crime, and how the impact of that is still impacting Lime Crime today, even though she's been disassociated from the brand for 4 years. This brand cannot come back because of the damage that she did. So of course, we're going to start at the beginning, the founding of Lime Crime, and who the heck is Doe Deere? Looking at the offerings of cosmetics now, it's easy to look at what we have and kind of take it for granted. The fact that we can probably get any color of eyeshadow that we want from some brand somewhere. We now have so many companies coming out with duochromes and multichromes and holochrome shadows. We have colorful eyeliners coming out from so many different brands. You can even find bright colored lipsticks from multiple different brands. Back when Lime Crime launched, it wasn't like that at all. If you wanted to get colorful eyeshadow, you were pretty much limited if you were staying mainstream to colors like maybe a pop of blue or a pop of purple. And if you were really lucky, you might get green. But overall, all of the cosmetics were natural looking shades of brown, maybe some grays and blacks. For lipsticks, it was literally all nude shades, red shades, and pink shades, unless you went to a store like Hot Topic or you were trying to find makeup for a Halloween costume. It just wasn't available. The textures of eyeshadows were either satin or matte for the most part. We didn't even have foiled eyeshadows back then, let alone holochromes and multichromes. But that all started to change in 1996 when Urban Decay launched their nail polish line, and it became really, really popular for coming out with non-traditional shades of nail polish. They also launched lipsticks. Soon after that, they started coming out with eyeshadows like Midnight Cowboy with this really cool shine on it, and they kind of expanded from there. Ironically though, just as a side note about Urban Decay, they really hit when they came out with the Naked palettes, ironically enough, that was completely against The things that had brought them to the forefront of people's minds when they thought urban decay. It was these wild colors, but they became popular for the naked pellets. Go figure. Anyway, my point is that back when Lime Crime launched, it was kind of, from what I remember, urban decay or nothing. So there was a definite hole in the market. There were not really any brands creating these colorful options for people, not for costumes, but for everyday wear. But Doe Deere's Lime Crime wasn't initially cosmetics. It was actually clothing. She was selling the clothes on eBay, of all places, up until about 2008 when she switched over to cosmetics. Another brand that came very shortly after that was a brand called Sugar Pill. Sugar Pill and Lime Crime had very similar vibes, and what some customers knew but others didn't was that there was friction and conflict between Amy Doe and Doe Deere, who owned the two brands. They actually used to be friends, and Doe was accused of copying Amy's designs all the way back in 2004. Through online communities on sites like LiveJournal, Amy publicly broke up with Doe and was basically like, she's a person, and that was kind of the end of that. There is a little more nuance and a little more story to that, but I want to get back to Doe. One of the reasons why Amy was so hesitant to support Doe and be friends with her was because back in 2005, she allegedly threatened to sue a 13-year-old girl because she wasn't watermarking or giving credit for the photos that she was using that actually belonged to Doe. And apparently Doe went off on this girl, and everybody was like, chill the frick out. So that kind of gave Doe a little bit of a reputation of being a bitch. But when Doe transitioned Lime Crime from a fashion company to a makeup company, the people who were buying the makeup didn't necessarily know Doe's history in indie fashion and just thought it was a really cool, fun makeup brand. It was all based in unicorns and pastel colors and fluffy little dresses, and the aesthetic was very appealing and extremely, extremely different from anything else on the market at the time. And I think one thing to Doe's advantage is that she's freaking beautiful. She looks like a doll. So Lime Crime Cosmetics hits the market at trade shows and through e-commerce, and there's this buzz surrounding this brand. I remember going to my first IMATS, the International Makeup Artist Trade Show, and seeing the Lime Crime booth for the first time, and you could not pass that booth without looking at it. It almost glowed, and the people dressed in their pastel costumes with their dramatic makeup, and when you would walk around IMATS, so many people, almost everybody, had one of those big, huge bags that said Lime Crime on it. Because that was the thing to advertise your brand throughout the trade show, was that you would give people these giant paper bags so that everybody knew you had shopped at Lime Crime. They weren't the only ones to do it. A lot of companies did it, but the Lime Crime bags were bold and they were different. But like Amy and others in the fashion community knew, Doe wasn't really a very good person. She wasn't a good person at all. But people didn't know that until things started coming out. Let's talk a little bit more about Doe. Before I get started in these, I want to just let you know that some of these are very serious and some of these are pretty minor. But my point is, dear viewers, is that it is the compilation of all of these things that gives us the picture of the kind of person that Doe presented herself to be. And in my opinion, it was a direct result of these choices that led to where Lime Crime is right now. If you know one story about the woman named Doe Deere, you probably know this one, because you've probably seen this picture. In 2007, Doe dressed up as Hitler for a Halloween party that she attended in New York City. This picture is a picture that she posted herself back in 2008. The whole post was a series of pictures that she posted about different Halloween costumes that she'd worn throughout the years. And each picture was accompanied by a little summary about the costume and then an award that she gave herself for the costume. So regarding the Hitler costume, this is what it said. In typical bad taste, I was Adolf Hitler. Once again, I was testing how much I can get away with. If you think Hitler is not a very popular figure where you are, wait till you get to NYC. I wasn't trying to offend anyone in particular. I just wanted to wear the costume. The reactions I got were varied, but I think most people got that it was all in good fun and didn't get in my face. Yay, smiley face. Award? Most offensive costume. This is so interesting because years later, when Doe was kind of weaning herself off of Lime Crime, or maybe Lime Crime was weaning themselves off of her, they had hired this woman. Her name was Kim Walls. Her role was the global general manager of Lime Crime, and she was interviewed by Racked. This is what she said about the Hitler costume. Wait till you hear this. I'll put it on the screen for you to read in its entirety, but basically, Kim explained that Doe was basically a naive teenager who didn't know any better. And being a Russian Jew, she explained that dressing up as Hitler was the biggest monster. But what Kim didn't say was that she was in fact not a teenager at the time. She was 26 years old when this happened. She had been in the United States for 9 years at this point, and she had been dressing up for Halloween for at least the past 5 Halloweens. So I would dare to say she knew exactly what she was doing, and I would back that up with Doe's own words that I read just a few minutes ago. So the PR move on Lime Crime's part worked for some people because some people were like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And I can see where some people might say, oh, she was just confused, but it doesn't match what actually really in reality happened. We've established at this point that Doe Deere was the kind of person that liked to push boundaries, the kind of person who liked to dance that line between being offensive and seemed to have no problem crossing over that line into complete and total offensiveness. But another aspect of Doe's personality that I think is really essential to understand is her difficulty handling criticism. Because this happened a lot. It was bad. And I think the worst one that became very public, at least I personally remember this, was the issue that she had with the blogger who went by Temptalia. Her real name is Christine. So another thing to put in context here, in the context of 2010, was that there really weren't a lot of people on YouTube or on the internet in general in video form reviewing makeup. If you wanted makeup reviews, a lot of people went to blogs. And in my memory, there was nobody as comprehensive or as good at this as Christine was with Temptalia. She had, and it's still there, you can go check it out, she has this entire database of colors is what it comes down to. So if you're looking for dupes for a particular shade, if you want to know the quality of a product, she used to release those in real time. She would get products in PR, she would purchase products, she would swatch them, and then she would give them a grade. Then she would use those swatches to then come up with dupes so you could decide whether you wanted to purchase the product or not. She was the absolute epitome of the perfect place to go find out about makeup back in 2010. I did not see anything like that while she was creating it, and I have not seen anything like it since. And another thing that was unique about Christine that's really important is that she always appeared to be very honest in her reviews. She clearly had the customer in mind when she was reviewing these products. It didn't matter. It seemed to be no difference between the products that she received in PR and the products that she purchased herself. I spent so much time talking about this because when Christine got the Lime Crime lipsticks in the mail, it was no different than any other PR that she got in the mail. The only difference was that Lime Crime was starting to be known as a brand that had controversies. We'll get into some of those in just a little bit. So Christine actually hesitated to review these lipsticks and was nervous to review them. This is what she says on the actual blog post. Over the months, I've been hemming and hawing over whether or not to do this review. Doe sent me these just around the time they were available to pre-order. Recently, Dusty, a longtime reader, asked me if I tried them and what my opinion was. I have decided that it's time to review these despite the controversy over the brand itself, for my readers, for good or bad. I only ask that you leave me out of the drama. And what happened is that her viewers did not bring her into the drama. Doe did that. Again, I'm going to put Christine's full review on the screen for you, but here is the summary. Basically, in the review, she compliments the pigmentation of the product as well as the light vanilla scent and the ability to stain the lips for a longer lasting look. She also liked the customized design of the bullet packaging, which was unusual at the time for an indie brand to go out of their way to make a custom packaging. But the critiques definitely outweighed the positives. She said that there was significant bleeding of the colors outside of the lip line, requiring a mandatory lip liner for most shades. She also noted patchy application, that many of the shades felt drying on the lips, and even though she liked the effort put into the packaging, Christine said it felt cheap and low quality when she was holding it in her hands. And as for the vanilla scent, she said that it wasn't pleasing. on the lips and had more of a waxy feel and a waxy taste to it. Overall, the review was, for $16 a pop, these don't compete with other lipsticks at the same price point. So Doe, being the blogger that she is, commented on Christine's post. This is what she had said. "Thanks for giving our lipsticks a try, Christine. We do have a lot of happy customers who delight in the pigmentation and the non-drying texture of our lipsticks. I suppose it's an individual experience, so I encourage everyone to give them a try. We are known for our excellent customer service and no questions asked return policy, XOXO Doe Deere." To which Christine responded, quote, "I'm happy to hear you have such a great return policy. We'll have to agree to disagree on an assessment of the lipsticks, of course." I'm going to keep bringing up that Vox article because it is so good. It is linked down below. But in that Vox article, they actually talked to Christine through email, and this is what she told them. "I wasn't impressed with a lot of shades, so it wasn't a glowing review. Lime Crime sent out an email to their customers and gave out my personal email address and asked customers to email me and tell me how great their lipsticks were." Yes, that happened. Doe actually reached out to her followers, and this is what she had said. "Finally, we wanted to discuss a less than favorable review we received on Temptalia.com. The review gave our Candy Future Opaque lipsticks a C- rating. We don't agree. Do you? Here's a link so you can see for yourself." And then the link to Temptalia's blog. Then it continues, "We would like to encourage all of our futurettes who have had good experiences with our company and products to make yourselves heard. Please don't keep your happy opinions to yourself. Feel free to email Christine, Temptalia, at insert personal email address here, and share your positive Lime Crime experiences with her. Let her know you disagree with her review, or leave a comment on the article letting everyone know your personal view on our products and company. Please be honest, respectful, and polite." Yes, she gave out Christine's personal email address and told her customers to go harass her. I honestly don't know what the end game was in Doe Deere's mind for this. I feel like it was probably trying to get Christine to take the review down or maybe go in with a more favorable review to stop the harassment. But honestly, I have no way of knowing what Doe's motivation was. All I know is that is absolutely bonkers. But Christine's post is still there to this day. I was able to find it. It is live. A lot of the things that have been said about Doe in the past, I had to use the Wayback Machine. This one is still there. So I am very happy that Christine stuck to her guns and kept that review up. And one thing that's interesting, because it was left up, is that the comments underneath are there. And what a lot of people are saying is that Doe wasn't telling the truth about her return policy, and that at the time, you actually weren't allowed to return anything to Lime Crime for any reason. So that's kind of interesting. Beyond attacking Temptalia, because this was, of course, was not a one-off thing, Doe was known for attacking customers as well. This next one, Doe says that it wasn't her. She said she didn't write this, but I think the general consensus of the internet is that this does fit her personality and that it's possible that it was her, but it's important to preface this by saying that Doe says that she didn't write this. Doe did an interview with an online publication called The Examiner, and that was back in October of 2009. And the interview was, honestly, it was pretty basic, but in the comments down below, people were talking. And the person saying that she was Doe said, "You guys need to quit coming after me because seriously, it was your fault that you idiots were stupid enough to spend $16 for a gram of product. But how can I blame you? My products are second to none in quality. Beautiful, whimsical colors and designer packaging. If you're too poor to buy my products, then go elsewhere and spend less and get a low quality product. You don't deserve to use Lime Crime. I'm actually thinking of making the LC Shop account registration invite/friends only because I don't need your money. If you want to spend your money on low quality mass-produced pigments from MAC, go right ahead. It's no skin off my nose. I'll still be making more cash than most of you imbeciles. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not checking this post again. If you have anything else to say, too bad, because I'm screening my comments. As I have no time for trolls, I have a life." if she did write that, that is absolutely freaking atrocious. Oh my gosh. Also from that Vox article, Doe wasn't beyond taking people to actual court over saying negative things about her, because there was so much negative that people were actually creating entire blogs dedicated to talking about how crappy of a person Doe was. It was bad. Michelle Jasinski, who owned the blog called Doe Deere Lies, Doe wasn't happy about that, so Doe sued her. She sued for damages to her reputation, lost sales, and more. Lime Crime alleged that Michelle's post cost the company sales totaling just under $250,000. Michelle said in the interview that she was under the impression it was based primarily on issues of copyright, although defamation was also alleged. And then they talk about a blogger named Gray, and this is a whole nother story. I'm going to tell you the short version, longer version in the Vox article, but basically she had a blog called Lagathik, and she got a threatening letter from Lime Crime because of a negative review that she posted on her blog. The lawyers threatened legal action for libel and slander if she did not delete the review and replace it with an apology, a scripted apology with bullet points and talking points that Lime Crime provided to her. But this is the thing about this one. Vox couldn't verify that this was real because apparently Gray faked her death because she was being threatened by the online knitting community, so they could not find her. There's a whole nother story about Gray and a subscription box and her ripping people off. So the general consensus over Gray across the internet is that she was an overall person, but they do believe her when it comes to this interaction with Lime Crime. That makes perfect sense because Gray ended up actually taking down her review, and that was out of character for her. This one can be verified because it came from the Lime Crime Instagram account. This is what happened. There was a controversy that we're not going to dig too deep on about whether or not the Lime Crime products were vegan because people had seen beeswax listed as an ingredient, and somebody is questioning whether the products are vegan or not in the post, and then Doe herself responded that the person was a dumbass. So there's that too. There were some other smaller situations that I'm not going to go deep into. Again, that Vox article is fantastic. There's a lot of them outlined in there. I have a ton of links down below where you can search out some of those smaller stories. But at this point, I want to switch over and talk about some of the big scandals from Lime Crime as a brand, because this is bad. It's really, really bad. I think it was really important to set up Doe Deere as a person first because Doe Deere and Lime Crime were essentially one unit because anything that went out about Lime Crime was attached to Doe. There were no products launched that she didn't personally talk about having a hand in. She did all the advertising for the products and that she was the face of the brand. She was the one who was posting on Instagram as the brand, talking about that it was her products. So when the company's products had issues, that was synonymous with Doe having issues. And the first issue actually today probably wouldn't be seen as a big issue like it was back then, because I don't think that private labeling, white labeling was something that was really understood very much back then. A lot of companies do this today, but back then it was seen as very shady in that it seemed like Doe was buying these wholesale craft glitters, these pigments, and then slapping a Lime Crime sticker on them and selling them at 3 or 4 times the cost. This is a much more common and publicly done practice today, but back then people lost their absolute shit over this. Then it gets a lot more serious. Let's talk about the China doll palette. As I'm filming this in 2024, there is a lot of debate about cultural appropriation versus cultural appreciation. People get into really heated conversations about what the difference is, what's okay, what's not okay. So I am going to allow people that are affected by this to talk about it. There's a fantastic video over on the Vox Asia website, and this is the video. I'm going to play what they have to say about this topic so we can have that proper baseline of what we're talking about.
Cultural appropriation to me is when you make it a costume and it's not coming from an authentic, genuine place.
When I see artists diving into Chinese culture and they're kind of using it in a way where, is this anything to do with your narrative? Is this just merely an accessory, a trend to your work? That's when I feel it's getting a bit inappropriate.
Cultural appreciation is when you actually like work with the people from the culture that you're like taking something from.
Big fashion brands can avoid having these types of backlash when they get people from the culture to consult.
So if you've taken inspiration from a certain culture, make sure that everyone knows the story of where it came from, how it came about.
A small interview, just giving credit towards that, I think makes the whole difference. What I feel like makes people so angry when, you're not really acknowledging what its actual roots are.
How did you make this a space that is more about them as well? Because a culture doesn't exist without its people.
With that in mind, I present to you the Lime Crime China Doll palette. The description next to this palette said, "Don't let her milky skin, pouty mouth, and flushed cheeks fool you. Underneath the poised facade, there lies a heart of a tigress." There is a fantastic blog post about this from back then from Vietnamese blogger named Portrait of Mai, and she talks a lot about what really was wrong with this palette in the nicest way possible. In the post, Mai starts off with, quote, "I take opposition to the way that Lime Crime has chosen to do this advertisement and how Chinese culture is somehow twisted in their interpretation and done in an ethnocentric and orientalist way. I'm not saying that the owner Doe is a racist, since some people might interpret what I'm saying that way. I'm saying that the campaign was done in a culturally insensitive way, and the entire thing is rather ignorant of Chinese culture past and present. The palette design was supposed to be evocative of these vintage Chinese advertising posters, and Mai talks about that in her blog, and she says that it was kind of accurate. I'm going to put a couple of examples over here so you can kind of see the similarities and differences. Mai talks about this specifically in her post. She says, now in these Shanghai advertisements, the women are wearing a traditional Chinese outfit called a cheongsam or a kipo, or in English, it's called a mandarin gown. Specifically, the women are wearing a tight-fitting version. According to Wikipedia's page on the kipo, the tight-fitting version that's most common today was created, popularized, and made fashionable during the 1920s in Shanghai by societies and upper-class women. According to Wikipedia's page on the kipo, the tight-fitting version that's most common today was created, popularized, and made fashionable during the 1920s in Shanghai by socialites and upper-class women. The kipo used to be loose-fitting, but it became outdated due to the popularity of the tighter kipo. She continues, now in the advertisement, it looks like the model is wearing a Japanese kimono. So first off, Japanese culture and Chinese culture are not interchangeable. Secondly, many of these vintage 1920s and 1930s Chinese advertisements feature the tight kipo in that era. So why wouldn't you use it? Doe Deere has specifically said that she loved the advertising campaigns from Shanghai during that period, yet she failed to use the clothing that was popular during that time in her advertisement. Oh, how you're completely doing it wrong. The tight kipo is still in use today, so it wouldn't be difficult to find one to use for the shoot. Further research pops up on this BuzzNet photo album of the model at the shoot that shows the full outfit, which actually looks like a Chinese and Japanese inspired robe as opposed to a kimono. The sleeves are large like a kimono, while the collar looks like it has frog button clasp. In the final thought about styling, Mai says, the styling of the shoot makes it look like a watered down stereotype of Chinese advertisements and culture, not an homage to them. Mai also questions why a Chinese model wasn't used for the advertisement if they were paying homage to Chinese advertisements. Mai also discusses just how offensive the whole China doll thing is. She says specifically that the stereotype is freaking old, the Orientalism is ridiculous, and I'm pretty tired of the idea that Asian culture is exotic and mystical. Mai finishes the post saying, I understand that people can say and will say, oh, why bother with this? It's just an advertisement and there are bigger things in the world to care about. Well, that's a pretty big red herring. Saying that doesn't make what I'm saying and my opinion any less legitimate. I feel rather strongly about this and I'm allowed to have these feelings, and many others share the same sentiment. So Doe did see Mai's blog post and actually reached out to her on Facebook. This is what Mai says that Doe messaged to her. Hello, Mai. I hope you don't mind me reaching out to you. I saw your blog post, read it very carefully, and had a few questions. Where can I email you? Thanks. And on that same day, Mai put up a blog post and was like, hey, Doe Deere reached out to me. I will keep you posted on this. But one thing that she made very clear, she said, I will say now that I have no interest in receiving or purchasing any Lime Crime products for review or for personal use. It would be unscrupulous to accept or purchase anything from the brand at this time and in the future. And then she says, you have a right to spend your money on whatever you want. I just am not going to do that. But then she specifically recognizes that brands do make mistakes and that she does allow opportunities for brands to learn and change. So then 2 days go by and Mai doesn't hear anything. And she's like, what's up? So she messages Doe back and still doesn't hear anything. So 2 more days go by and Mai goes over to Doe's public blog, which has her email address there. And she emails her and is like, hey, you reached out to me and wanted to talk to me. And now I'm reaching out to you. Like, what's going on? Do you want to talk or not? Doe finally responds to this email, and this is what she says. Hi, Mai. I thought I had some questions initially, but after rereading your post, I think I understand what you mean. We try to consider every viewpoint. Thanks for your feedback. Mai posted about her feelings about this on her blog, saying, this is basically a thank you, but kindly f off email. She completely blew me off. It doesn't address any of my concerns at all. From this, I feel like she obviously doesn't care about how ignorant the campaign was. She obviously doesn't care that her words help reinforce Asian stereotypes. And she obviously doesn't care at all, because if she did, then she would have done something about what I said, but she's not. And I don't expect she will. So then Doe went on her blog and she talked about the backlash to the China doll palettes. So this is where Doe stood on it. This is where her public opinions that I could find ended. This was the final thought. On choosing a non-Asian model, this is what she said. Before I answer this, let me make clear that I think Asian women are beautiful, and I've worked with a few in the past as a makeup artist. However, since our China doll was not meant to be necessarily Asian, she could be portrayed by a person of any descent. China doll is a character, an amalgam of inspirations ranging from dolls to Shanghai Art Deco advertising posters. We chose Hannah Beth, who is a total sweetheart, by the way, because she has lovely features and embodies the feisty spirit we wanted. And yes, the name is a pun that refers to both China and porcelain. So keep in mind here that I think that Doe's first language is Russian, not English. So she may have just used the wrong word here, but I don't think she meant to use the word pun, because this is the definition of the word pun. A joke, exploiting the different possible meanings of a word or the fact that there are words which sound alike but have different meanings. I think she meant homonym or multiple meaning word is what she was trying to say, but that doesn't work either. She's trying to say that a China doll doesn't necessarily have to be from China. And that's true, because a China doll was basically another name for a porcelain doll. I think what she's trying to say is that using the term China doll, she wasn't referencing China as in the country, but China as in the porcelain, similar to these dolls that are in the Museum of Play. But the problem is that these dolls are German. And there's no way that they were portraying aristocratic German heritage in this ad campaign. It just makes no freaking sense. It's like, nice try, but absolutely not. This is really, like, the word gaslighting is overused and misused so much, but this is it. This is the textbook definition of gaslighting. You thought it was something else, but oh no, you are mistaken. It was something else. It wasn't. There's no freaking way. Regarding the promoting of Asian stereotypes, she said that that wasn't what this was about, that the advertising was for human qualities, not associated with any race. She, meaning the China doll character, is a living contradiction and above all, a woman. She can never be, will never be stereotyped. If the image was not associated with any race, why are there so many Asian references in here? Like mixed up Japanese, Chinese references? No, this is a piss on my leg and tell me it's raining situation. Regarding cultural appropriation, she ponders whether an Asian garden bathroom set is cultural appropriation. She says she finds the notion a little silly. This is such a nuanced topic that I'm going to link some articles and videos down below for you about appropriation versus appreciation in case you would like to learn more about this topic. But what you need to know right now is that what Doe is saying is complete bullshit. She concludes the post by doubling down, saying that the China doll palette will live and that she is not going to kill her just because it makes some people uncomfortable. That would require sacrificing my artistic integrity and sending a radical message I don't believe in to the community. Gross. So that's that on that. But we can't make this video without talking about the business end of Lime Crime and the huge data breach that was an absolute hot freaking mess. We all know that data breaches on the internet happen sometimes. It happens. But there's a process of what you do when there's a data breach. And the first thing you do is you contact customers and be like, hey, there was a data breach. So do you think that that's what Lime Crime did? If you're guessing the pattern of this video, no, they didn't do that. No. When Lime Crime's website was hacked on October 4th of 2014 due to an expired certificate used to secure credit card transactions called an SSL certificate, they told no one. They told no one. According to topclassactions.org, the site wasn't secured until February 15th of 2015. Over 4 months, this website was open to the hackers to get any information they wanted. Compromised were customers' names, addresses, credit and debit card account numbers, expiration dates, security codes, and their limecrime.com usernames and passwords were allegedly exposed and open and being gathered for all of those 4 months. During this time period, customers said that thousands of dollars went missing from their accounts. One user on Reddit said, literally, this happened to me today. $2,300 worth of stuff was bought with my credit card. Thankfully, my bank has agreed to refund it all, but not before 21 days. I can't believe this. According to that article in Vox, Lime Crime customers reported up to $10,000 being stolen out of their accounts, but most people reported losing $200 or $300 to unauthorized international purchases. The post about the $10,000, I have that one. Here it is. It says, at Doe Deere, my identity was stolen after your so-called website hack. Now I cannot go back to grad school because over $10,000 was charged to a credit card open in my name. I have no credit and cannot get another student loan. You've ruined my life over a $16 lipstick. Hashtag boycott Lime Crime. Rumor has it that some customers were able to narrow down and figure out that their cards were compromised due to a Lime Crime purchase. So they reached out to Lime Crime, allegedly through email, through different other social channels, and Lime Crime's response was either to ignore them, to delete their comment, or to block them entirely if they persisted. And remember, during this time period when people are letting them know that their information has been compromised and it was because of the Lime Crime website, the website was still open and people were still getting their information stolen. But Lime Crime is like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. It's not us. We're not doing anything. And they just let it keep happening, is what is alleged by people who were involved in the situation. So what happened is that eventually, like I said, in February, Lime Crime let customers know. But you would think they would send out an email to customers who had purchased product during that time, because when you buy something online, you have to give your email address. So all they'd have to do is just send out an email to those people. But instead they posted on Instagram. Now, I couldn't find a screenshot of the Instagram post. I looked, I couldn't find it, but apparently it was rainbow colored. And it was basically just a message about the data breach. Thankfully, they did eventually send out a formal letter through the mail and also a digital email. So I have copies of both of those. You can feel free to pause to read them. It's a pretty standard legal letter just informing them of the breach. There was a class action lawsuit filed by customers against Lime Crime for allowing their information to be stolen, and that was actually settled. Lime Crime still, this happens in these class actions. They say that they didn't do anything wrong, but then they end up settling. So they settled for $110,000, which sounds like a lot. It sounds like it'll be sufficient. But wait till you hear this. If you heard the Family Dollar story where they had the rodent infestation and then they ended up giving people gift cards to Family Dollar as a consolation for buying products that could have been contaminated by rodents, this is giving that. This is giving that. So what they did was they gave a $45 refund and a $15 off coupon to purchase more on the Lime Crime website in case they would like to come back as customers. What the fuck? What? Yes, that's what they did. That's what they did. Lime Crime sent out about 104,500 notices to people that could have been affected and may have asked for that $45 and the $15 coupon. You had to apply. That's the way class actions work. You have to like fill out a form and apply for that. So we don't know exactly how many people got their $44 in their coupon, but at least some people got something. But if you're missing $10,000 because someone in another country opened up a credit card under your name, I mean, $44 is not going to cut that. It's not going to cut it. And it gets worse because in an interview with New Face magazine, Doe was asked specifically about the security breach, and this is what she said. As the CEO and face of the brand, I was always the focus of controversy. Many of the company's mishaps, or even just bad luck, got laid out at my feet. While it didn't seem fair, I've learned to accept the responsibility of being a leader, learn from it, and come back a better businesswoman as a result. The last major controversies I'm going to put together because they both have to do with customer safety and Lime Crime products. So the first one happened in July of 2015. And basically there were customers reaching out to the FDA saying, hey, these lip products, it was probably their Velveteens. I think it was their Velveteen liquid lipsticks. They contain ultramarines and ferric ferrocyanide, which are not FDA approved for lip use. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you've heard me talk about the red pigments and yellow pigments that are not FDA approved in the US for use on the eyes. It's very, very similar to that situation, but it's just for lips specifically. Customers complained to the FDA that their lips were getting super itchy from using these products. Lime Crime said that it was a labeling error and they had their lab test the products to see if they had ultramarines or ferric ferrocyanide in the lipsticks, found that they did not, and then submitted that to the FDA, and then they were cleared. It's important to note here too that friend of the show, cosmetic chemist Perry Romanowski, who runs the podcast The Beauty Brains, fantastic podcast if you're interested in cosmetic chemistry when it comes to makeup and hair care and all of that. It's so freaking good. I highly recommend that podcast. But Perry actually weighed in on this point, and he explained that with these pigments, it is similar to the not safe for eyes pigments for eyes in that it's just not FDA approved, that really there shouldn't be any harm done to a person's lips from putting this in a lipstick. That if people were having irritation from the lipsticks, chances are it wasn't from that pigment. Perry said specifically, it is highly unlikely that people have gotten sores on their lips due to the colorant. So in the intro, when I was talking about cold sores, that was this one. The second safety issue that they had was in 2016, and it was because people, when they were hitting pan on their Superfoil eyeshadows, they noticed that there's some discoloration in the bottom of the pan, and I don't think anybody got these independently tested, but it appears to be rust and or mold in the pan. And that chick Kim Walls, the one that had explained away the Hitler costume in a completely inaccurate way, this is what she said about the rust in the pans. She said that the discoloration was due to glycerin bubbles and not rust or mold. That the glycerin in the product attracted moisture, which created excess water inside the product, leading to condensation inside the package. All right, so science-wise, reality. Eyeshadow pans can either be made out of tin or aluminum, and the tin ones will rust, the aluminum ones will not rust. So if you are using a product like glycerin, you have to use aluminum pans, because what glycerin does is it's a humectant. Its whole job is to pull water into the product, and it can actually pull water from the air into the product, so it makes sense that the pan would rust over time. It makes sense that there could be mold as well. I don't know. Again, I don't know if these were independently tested, but she never explicitly says that the rust and or the mold were real. She just says tough lessons were learned and then moves on. One extra little bonus that I wanted to throw in here, this little ad campaign here, this was apparently a cigarette themed lipstick collection marketed toward young moms for Mother's Day of 2017, because of course it was. Things changed in 2018 when Lime Crime was sold to a company called 10 Gram Capital Partners. If you've never heard of them, you might have heard of some of their other brands. So for example, they own Algena Skincare, they own Revive Skincare, they own something called HRB Brands, which owns VO5 and also LA Looks, as well as the retailer Cosbar. So what happened when that happened, when they were acquired, was they were trying to figure out how to kind of clean up the reputation of Lime Crime. Doe at that point, because she had sold the brand, she joined the board, but wasn't in charge of things. She was more just kind of giving her input as a board member, but the brand needed to do something about this image. This is where this personally affected me. And I actually have a full live stream that I did about this because I spent many years not talking about this and then decided that it's been long enough. I'm just going to talk about it. So Doe Deere actually reached out to me back in 2018, September to be specific, and asked me if I would do an interview with her to talk with her and kind of clear the air and try to help get Lime Crime on a better track. And that was where I wanted to take it, is I wanted to have her just straight up address all of the issues and say, look, I'm sorry for this. I messed up here. This was what I learned. This is how I'm moving forward. Like, this is how I would do things differently in the future. Like, give her the opportunity to address all of these scandals and concerns in an honest way and just be like, look, you know, I've learned a lot from those situations and now I want to do better. And this is how I'm going to do that. That was what I wanted to do for the interview. So I spent like 2 freaking days, like full days, like researching, like getting in it, like sun up to sundown, like trying to organize these questions. And I reached out to different people who knew more about it than I did and had them look over my questions, and I sent them over to Doe. So I sent her the interview questions ahead of time because when I do interviews, I like who I'm interviewing to know what I'm going to say, because I don't want anybody to come back and be like, you caught me off guard, I said something that I didn't mean. I want people to know what's coming so they can properly prepare, so that way it is exactly what they want the interview to be without me pulling any fastballs on them that they weren't expecting. So I send Doe over the questions in 2 different pieces. Everything seems fine. A couple of days later, she's like, hey, so I don't think I really should do this interview in this way. Maybe we can just talk about the future of makeup and the beauty community and social media. And I was like, no. I was like, nobody freaking cares. Like, I'm going to put up my email. I'll put up what I said. I was like, nobody freaking cares. I was like, people are mad at you and they want to know how you're going to change things in the future. What's going to be different? No, literally nobody cares what your thoughts are on the beauty community right now because people are mad at you. We need to address this first and then we can talk about the beauty community. So a few days go by and she sends me another email and she's like, hey, I'm not going to do the interview anymore. 10 Gram doesn't want me to do it. So I was kind of pissed because I had spent a significant amount of time on this video and researching, and I put a lot of heart into it and I really wanted it to be good, and I was excited to be able to interview Doe and get all of this out. So she said no to me, and what I didn't know at the time is they were actually looking to do a different interview. They reached out to another creator to replace me, and the creator's name is Jessica, and Jessica did the interview. She went to the Lime Crime offices and she asked a bunch of questions. They manipulated the hell out of her, and it was not a hard-hitting interview in any way. But what Jessica did get them to say, which I think a lot of people really appreciated, was that Doe really was still involved in the brand, that she was still on the board, and that she was still stopping into the offices to give her feedback on things, that she was definitely still involved. But overall, the backlash that Jessica got from that interview was pretty consensus in that they didn't feel like Jessica had ask those hard-hitting questions. And I think what people didn't realize at the time is that she wasn't allowed to. I tried that. If Jessica said she was going to ask those questions, or if she had tried to ask those questions, they would have canceled the interview. And also, the interview wasn't with Doe, it was with the leadership at the time. Jessica's interview is gone off of the internet at this point, so I can't show you clips from it, but what I can show you is her response video that she did. She talked about the interview and how she felt it went in hindsight with her friend Atlee, also known as Ashley. I'm going to play a little clip for you now.
And so a lot of people want to know my final verdict on Lime Crime, and since you were there and you touched base on it a little bit in your recent video, I thought that we could just kind of talk about it together.
Okay.
I'm scared too. We've talked about it a lot personally, just like between me and you. And I ended up sending follow-up questions to Lime Crime, and they took a while to get back to me. And I think it was like 2 weeks.
Oh.
But I was just severely disappointed with how Lime Crime responded. And even though it was my first ever interview, could I have done things differently? Yeah, all the time. But I think it was just, I feel that there was a lack of transparency, which is severely disappointing to me because I like to give people a second chance. And I don't know.
When you say transparency, I feel like it might, like, I feel like when you talk about transparency, some people might not understand, but basically I feel like you're saying that the questions weren't answered, like, honestly, in your opinion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, they answered them, but they
It
just...
was like, they didn't get answered.
Yeah, they just put words together, and it kind of was butting around the question. And so that really disappointed me, and I feel like there was just such a lack of transparency and honesty that I personally just don't feel comfortable using them right now. And I hope in the future one day they change. Like, I'm such a hopeless romantic isn't the right word, hopeful person, that one day they will change. But as of right now, I just made the decision to not use them.
And I actually talked to Jessica on the phone after I found out that she had done this interview after it went live, and she's absolutely lovely. And I felt so bad for her because it just didn't go the way that she had hoped, and she was getting a lot of backlash for it. And she really is such a freaking sweetheart. So they used her, and it didn't end up improving the brand's reputation at all because, yes, if you purchase from Lime Crime, Doe's still making money. So Doe was part of the board until 2020, so like 2 more years, and then her and her husband Mark ended up exiting the brand completely. That's when a chick named Andrea Blyden took over as CEO, and she is still in charge of Lime Crime to this day. Prior to Lime Crime, she was the VP of marketing of the US branch of The Body Shop, and then also before that, she was the VP of brand and retail marketing at Kiehl's. So if you are curious about the leadership right now for Lime Crime, it is owned by 10 Grand Partners. The CEO is Andrea Blyden, and Doe Deere is not involved at all. So that leads us to today, right now. And I love that about Behind the Controversy is that we can look at all of this in hindsight with a clear 2020 lens and talk about how Lime Crime really did impact our beauty space and how it changed things and the impact of what happened with them back then, and also how what happened back then is still affecting Lime Crime to this day. First thing I want to say is that I appreciate that brands like Lime Crime and Sugar Pill really pushed more mainstream brands and more indie brands to come out with products that were more colorful, that were more fun, that were more lighthearted. I do feel like those 2 brands and other brands that came around that time really changed the trajectory of how makeup was being made because it was proof that customers didn't just want the same old natural products. Of course, the more natural products always sold more. If you look at Urban Decay as an example, their hero product, the Naked palette, always sold more and was their big product over the more colorful palettes that they did. But these brands really did bring more color into the mainstream, which I think is fantastic. As far as Lime Crime as a brand, they don't seem to be doing very well. And one of the indicators of that is their Instagram feed. And we've talked about this before, is that when you look at a brand's Instagram feed, it's kind of the lifeblood of their advertising. You can really tell the health of a brand these days by what their Instagram is doing, and it is not good. They have currently 3.3 million followers over on Instagram, and they have trouble getting 300 likes on a post. It is mostly reposts of people who are tagging the brand, which their content is fine, like it's fine, but you can tell that they're just kind of scavenging for what they can get around the internet instead of creating campaigns that might actually bring in new customers. Their most popular post over the past year was one about Taylor Swift. Of all things. She's at a football game. She's watching the game. She's got this red lipstick on. And the caption says, "Me remembering my Velveteen's lipstick is smudge proof and transfer proof." The post has a little over 2,200 likes and 100 comments, and most of those comments are very critical. Things like, "That's not even what she's wearing, and who cares about Taylor Swift? Huge fan of your makeup, but this is kind of the dumbest ad ever." And then another post that says, "This is kind of weird to post considering she's wearing Pat McGrath lipstick, LOL." Their last collection was the Dark Rain collection that was launched in holiday of 2023. And if you go to their website now, it's still available in May of 2024, and most of it is 50% off. About a month ago, they launched a 3-ounce tube of their hair dye. That was their big launch. That's available exclusively at Walmart. But really, their Instagram is just, it's kind of sad. It's not indicative of a very healthy social media presence or a social media team that is really working to grow the brand. So what about Doe herself? What is she doing? What has she been up to? Well, she does have a pretty decent following over on her own personal Instagram. She posts regularly. It gets way better engagement than the Lime Crime Instagram. She's still into the same aesthetic that she was 20 years ago. Here is a post that she posted last week of her changing outfits while she is on a treadmill. Really, her public presence hasn't changed in 20 years. This is what she's still posting. After selling Lime Crime to 10-gram partners, she went back to her roots and she started a fashion brand called Poppy Angeloff. And then she branched out on that website. Besides doing a bunch of dresses, she then started doing a little bit of jewelry. So you can still find dresses and jewelry over there, but her main product seems to be tea sets with dogs and cats on them. So that's the thing. The big thing I want to end this video with is, will Lime Crime come back? And I think that's going to be up to 10-gram partners. The problem with, and the reason why I feel like they have not come back, is that the growth of Lime Crime, the beginnings of Lime Crime, all the way up until Doe left, Lime Crime and Doe Deere were essentially one unit. When something happened with Lime Crime, it was associated with Doe Deere and vice versa. So those controversies, the things that happened with both the brand and with Doe herself, it was all intertwined because Doe was such in the forefront of all of the advertising and all of the marketing and all of the everything was about Doe Deere. And around that same time that she left in 2018, there were so many indie brands that were launching with colorful makeup. Colorful makeup was mainstream now. So Lime Crime just wasn't special anymore. There was nothing special about those Venus palettes anymore. And people were realizing that the quality wasn't as good. Like, for example, I remember the little Polly Pocket palettes. I had gotten one at an Ipsy event and it was terrible quality, especially considering the indie brand makeup that was coming out that was way better quality. And even some mainstream brands were coming out with better colorful makeup than what Lime Crime was coming out with. The competition was steep and there was nothing that made Lime Crime stand out as a brand to buy. In fact, people that might have bought it were purposely not buying it because of the history. From the outside looking in, it looks like Lime Crime is hanging on by their unicorn teeth. Like they're just like trying to hang on to something. It looks like, based on their Instagram post, that the hair dye seems to be selling pretty well. I mean, if you look at the grand scheme of things, there aren't nearly as many bright, colorful hair dye lines as there are more natural colors. So there is kind of an in there. And there are people that have their favorite hair dye and they know that it works and then they continue to repurchase. It's something that could be repurchased much more often than some other cosmetic products. So that makes sense. Their Instagram also talks about their wet cherry lip gloss a little bit, but I mean, it's a cherry scented lip gloss. Is it really that special? Not really. I've tried it. I mean, it's good. It's a good lip gloss, but you know, it's not worth going out of my way to purchase. You know what I'm saying? So they really don't have any hero products anymore like they used to in the heyday of the Velveteens. Having been in this makeup space for 12 years and watching brands come and go, if the owners of Lime Crime came to me and they said, "Hey, Jen, what do you think we can do to build back Lime Crime?" This is what I would say. I would say that you need to figure out who the Lime Crime customer is and market to them. It's basic marketing. And I think that the customer has changed because people are older. Even though Doe Deere seems to look exactly the same age, I don't understand how that works. But even though that has happened, the Lime Crime customer of yesteryear are now in their 30s or 40s. So reaching out to those older Gen Z or middle Gen Z customers, I think would be really freaking smart. That festival crowd, the people wearing the flower crowns at Coachella, like those people people I think would really dig on a Lime Crime rebrand. And speaking of that, I think it might be smart to change the name to something else. And if you feel like with those hair dyes, you really want Lime Crime to be on the, call it whatever, unicorn, blah, 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 whatever, you know, Lime Crime hair dye, whatever, like put it as a sub underneath the main branding change. I think that would go a long way, because when people look up Lime Crime, all you see is friggin' Hitler costumes and China doll palettes. And the internet is forever. Even the things that have been deleted from blogs, I was still able to find them. And people will find them. So just change the dang name. But honestly, like looking at stuff, it seems like 10 Gram is giving up on Lime Crime as being a big money maker, that they're just holding on to the hair dye, hoping it sells enough to keep them afloat, keep them in profits, making Lime Crime worth still existing. But I do think that there's a lot of potential there now that Doe hasn't been involved for the past 4 years. But this isn't just about my opinion, my friend. No, it is not. It is also about your opinion in the collective brain of makeup awesomeness, where we help each other not to buy crap and we talk about things like this. I would love to know any of your thoughts on this topic down below. Were you ever a Lime Crime customer? Do you remember them from the live journal days? What is your feeling about all of these? Any and all thoughts down below. Would love to read them. Thank you so much for watching Behind the Controversy. I hope you enjoyed it. I will put the playlist for Behind the Controversy down in the video description down below. I think especially what the video you're going to like, if you like this video, is the one that I did on the Lisa Frank collaboration with a company called Glamour Dolls. That was a story, my friend. It's a fascinating story with all kinds of twists and turns. I think you're absolutely going to love it. And speaking of that, over here, I'm going to put 2 videos. The bottom one is going to be that Behind the Controversy, the Lisa Frank one. The top one, YouTube's going to pick based on your personal viewing history. But if you do have to go for now, it is no problem at all. Thank you for hanging out as long as you did, and mad love to you, and I will see you in a video very, very soon. Bye!